2022 was a pretty rough year for Kanye West. It started with him beefing with his ex-wife's sketchy new boyfriend Pete Davidson, which then led to him promoting an album that, when heard, would be heavily unfinished, but had a whole lot of potential. That record was Donda 2, which would actually never see an official release to streaming platforms, but it's at the end of the year where Kanye would conjure up the most controversy for himself all year, when he would begin to attack Jewish people with a string of ill-informed and offensive anti-Semitic rants. Now, in between those events, in the fall of 2022, Ye would actually begin to tease the prospect of new music, but it wasn't merely just finished Donda 2 tracks. Ye would play multiple songs in clubs and even premiere a track at his Yeezy Season 9 fashion event in October, with all these songs allegedly being a part of a collab album with James Blake, Kanye, and No ID. To a lot of people, the prospect of a Kanye and James Blake collab project is an awesome idea, especially when you throw No ID in there, who is one of Kanye's mentors. And here's the thing, the songs that we did here, they were low quality, but they all sounded great. Unfortunately, progress on the album would be put to a halt, as James Blake would stop working with Kanye due to his controversial comments in late 2022. And really, among all of Ye's many unreleased projects, this one is one of the most mysterious. We know very little. But today, I'm going to run down all the info we do have on this collab, and try to understand not only what this project would have sounded like, but also if there's still a chance that it'll see the light of day and be released someday. And spoiler alert, there's a chance. Alright, so the timeline for this No ID, James Blake, and Kanye West collab album, it really starts in spring of 2022. As discussed in the intro, Kanye was set to drop Donda 2 in February. That never happened. There was a chaotic listening party where songs clearly were unfinished. They clearly needed more work from Ye. And after the listening party, we saw studio pics. So we knew that they were working in the studio. A lot of people inferred that they were finishing Donda 2, but that project would never have an official release. So Kanye's working in the studio all throughout the spring, and in April, he would have a studio session with James Blake. For those who don't know, James Blake is a very talented musician and producer who creates a lot of ambient, spacey, and experimental music. He has worked with a lot of hip-hop artists in the past to great success, from Travis Scott to Kendrick Lamar, and of course Kanye himself. Now, I'd imagine that it is here that Kanye and James Blake first discussed the idea of making a collab effort. And the public, us, we would not know that a collab was on the way in the talks, or even that James Blake and Kanye were in the studio together until about fall of 2022. Reminder that the fan base at this point, we still thought Kanye was going to finish Donda 2 and put that out. All throughout the summer of 2022, Ye wasn't focused on music. He was focused on fighting The Gap, who had a partnership with Kanye's Yeezy brand at this point in time, regarding how management, pricing, and more were being handled with the deal. Around September, Ye would officially announce that he was going to hold a Yeezy Season 9 fashion event, which established independence from The Gap, but also for fans, got some hype because they thought maybe there's a chance he plays some new music at this thing. However, fans actually wouldn't have to wait for that fashion event to go down to hear some new music, as randomly, Naomi Campbell would go live on Instagram and stream from some club where Kanye was present and playing some new tracks. The tracks played at the club were not just finished Donda 2 tracks. These were brand new, never heard before songs that had a very ethereal sound, which was a very different style for Kanye, being that just months earlier during the Donda 2 era, he was really having that trap influence. All of these songs on the live sounded pretty damn great, and there was 3 total. We know them as Always, which is officially titled What I Would Have Said at Virgil's Funeral, Never Coming Back, and Showtime. Just hours after Ye played these tracks in the club, James Blake would take to Twitter to confirm his involvement in the creation of these songs, saying multiple interesting things. First off, James would clarify that these tracks were not just Kanye sampling his work, but rather original. The vocals he had on Always, they're performed by him specifically for the track. They're brand new. Also, he would clarify that he produced Always as well as the other 2 songs played on the stream. Just days after those James Blake tweets, Ye himself would post a picture on his Instagram story of James Blake and No ID in the studio with him, teasing new material, specifically involving those 2. But again, we still didn't have full confirmation that these guys had an entire collab album together. As far as we knew, they had a studio session, and the songs there that they worked on, they're just going to end up on Kanye's next release. Now, the Yeezy Season 9 fashion event goes down on October 3rd, 2022. The good thing about it is, it's at this event, Ye would play one of those tracks heard in the club, and through the live stream, we would get to hear a higher quality version of the track. The bad news is, this is really the start of the end for Kanye in 2022. This is the beginning of what I like to think of as his most controversial era in his entire career, which would eventually lead into all the anti-Semitic stuff. But I'm going to start out with the good first before we have to unfortunately cover all of that. And we're going to focus on the music. So after the show really just wrapped up, Kanye would go ahead and play Always, aka What I Would Have Said at Virgil's Funeral. The song was generally well received by fans. People liked what they heard with the James Blake contributions and everything, but it unfortunately was overshadowed by Kanye's words and his attire at this event. Ye would wear a goofy ass shirt with Pope Francis on the front and a phrase on the back which read, "White Lives Matter." Some people would be very hurt by this and see it as a dangerous message to promote. Others would say that it was clearly a joke and Kanye was just being satirical. Either way, I think it's pretty clear that Kanye was doing this just to drum up controversy and attention, which I think is pretty lame. What would piss people off also is that Kanye would have controversial right-wing politician Candace Owens attend this event, and she would be wearing that same shirt with Kanye, taking photos together and everything. Just how embarrassing, man. Like, I hate this era so much. And from here, Ye would just get even more controversial as he would go from that to then saying he was going to go DEFCON 3 on Jewish people. This pretty much came about from Kanye having 2 major beefs with these individual CEOs in the realm of handling his business dealings and such, and those businessmen happen to be Jewish. So basically, from his 2 personal issues with these individuals, Kanye would go on to make a bunch of generalizations about Jewish people as a whole, and really go out on this media run of spreading a ton of hate speech and anti-Semitism, which was a real blow for a lot of Kanye fans because a lot of the people in the Kanye community were naturally drawn to Ye as an artist due to the common motif in his music of motivation and really of taking on personal issues in life through positivity. For a guy who constantly spread the message of love everyone in his career, this was a real left turn. Kanye has since apologized for his words in late 2022, but man, I cannot stress enough how ignorant, ill-informed, and really irresponsible it was for Kanye to say all this shit back then. Like I said, he would go on to apologize, and some fans like me can stick around and separate the art from the artist, really just pay attention to the music. It really did leave a mark on his fan base as well as a mark on his career forever. But like I said, he really went on this media run of doing these interviews and just saying all this anti-Semitic shit. But it's in one of those interviews where he would actually, for the love of God, talk about some music. And it was when he went back on Drink Champs in 2022. Briefly, Nor would get Kanye to talk about music. And Kanye would say this.
Like right now, when me, James Blake, and No ID are in the studio working on our album, who do you think we'd be bringing up when we talking about songs?
He just asked that as if like that wasn't a crazy bombshell to drop. Now I remember I didn't even watch this interview. I saw a brief clip of Kanye saying some really fucked up shit and I said, I don't even care. I remember seeing a news headline that said Kanye announced his James Blake No ID collab album, and I remember not even caring because Kanye's words at this time, it had turned so many fans like me off from anything he was doing artistically. We just didn't care anymore. We were over it. And really, this is the last time that this project would even be mentioned publicly, as James Blake allegedly stopped working with Kanye due to his words around this period. This is not confirmed, but James Blake has stopped working with Kanye in the past due to Kanye saying some dumb shit, so I don't really think this is far-fetched. As 2022 came to a close, Kanye would finally go quiet and pretty much spend the following year in hiding. Throughout most of 2023, Kanye would live a pretty private life, staying off of social media, staying away from the limelight and the public eye, and working on a whole lot of music in various different countries. Despite Ye getting back to work on music in the summer of 2023, the prospect of that James Blake, Kanye, and No ID collab project, it just seemed dead. There was no news about James Blake or No ID joining Ye in his camp in the studio over in Japan, over in Florence, and a lot of people had just forgotten about the project entirely. But as Kanye started the rollout for his comeback project in December of 2023, we would officially hear a brand new track from Ye and James Blake. So firstly, comeback album is a collab album with Ty Dolla $ign called Vultures. 2 listening parties have been held, aka Kanye's calling them raves, and at the first one, which was held in Miami, he would play a song that may be on Vultures, we don't know yet, which we'll get into that in a second, but the track featured James Blake and his daughter North. On the song, North is rapping over this James Blake sample, and according to some people, this track is produced by Blake and No ID, and while we don't officially have a name for this track, it has not been officially released just yet, fans have given it the title of You Don't Want. Now, like I said, it has not been released, but there is talk that when released, this song may not be on Vultures. It may not even be on Vultures Volume 2, because Kanye, according to some insiders, is working on a ton of projects right now. Following this rave, insiders would come forward with some information regarding Kanye's current creative process in this Vultures era, which is happening at the moment that I'm filming this video. Insiders would say that Kanye is working on multiple different projects, from a solo album to Vultures Volume 1 and Volume 2, Playboi Carti's upcoming album, a Bump J album, and a collab project with James Blake and No ID. So, according to trusted sources, this collab project, it still has some life, but we've also heard that from Kanye affiliates as well. KC, who worked with Kanye heavily in the Donda era, he has writing credits on 24, Praise God, Hurricane, and also has a feature on Keep My Spirit Alive. He would say on Twitter that he worked on the project and laid down some vocals earlier this year in 2023. And additionally, Fat Money, who has been working with Kanye since the Donda 2 era, he would put out a tweet that said, "All I want for Christmas is for Kanye to drop the tracks he has with James Blake," saying the world deserves it. Now, I gotta say, my hopes are not high, because Kanye is supposed to release one collab album, and he has missed about, 4 or 5 release dates at this point. But I do believe there's a chance that some of the tracks that were gonna be on the collab, I believe they may end up on these various projects, be that the Kanye solo album or even one of the Vultures records. I believe that because there's this insider, Dealey1, who is separate from the insider we talked about just moments ago, who, when asked about if there was any tracks that Kanye was really ambitious about, he really liked from this era that he's currently working on, he would respond with Back to Me, Everybody, and Always. So while James Blake, No ID, and Kanye individually, they have not confirmed that this project is still on the way, it's still in the works for a future release, it's just nice to know that one of the tracks from that era not only made it, but is being worked on to be finished for a future release, hopefully soon. Apparently, according to Dealey, that same insider, the James Blake collab is fully finished, so it's really up to Ye as to whether or not he wants to drop this thing. That being said, of course, take all of this info with a grain of salt. And with that, we have pretty much covered the entire timeline of this unreleased James Blake, Kanye, and No ID collab album. So now that we understand all the events surrounding the project, let's get into what tracks would have made up this record, what this project would have sounded like. Alright, so like I said in the intro of this video, we know very little about this era, down to the point where we don't even know what this album was going to be called. We know that studio sessions occurred in April of 2022, maybe in the summertime as well, but like I said, we don't even know if this project had a title. I put War in the title of this video because that is the fan-given name for this collab joint. Kanye put out a documentary-esque video on YouTube titled Last Week, around the time that he was teasing this collab with James Blake. In the video, Kanye not only premiered a lot of tracks, but also had this graphic put up that read War, and it looked really cool, and a lot of people said, hey, maybe that's the working title for whatever project musically Kanye is working on at this moment. So, you got me. I used some clickbait here. It is not confirmed to be the name of the collab, but it does go pretty hard. I could see why fans would gravitate towards calling it that. So the main tracks we know that were supposed to be on this collab album are the three main ones that were played on the Naomi Campbell live stream. And we're going to start off with What I Would Have Said at Virgil's Funeral, aka Always. This is the track that was played at the Yeezy Season 9 event in higher quality, still not like the greatest quality, although this track would eventually release, the mumble version.
It did not release. I meant to say leak. And I don't have a graphic, so I can't do a voiceover to fix it. Anyway.
As well as a version that features Vori. It was produced by James Blake and No ID, you guessed it. And a lot of fans call this one Always because that is the main thing Kanye sings about in the chorus throughout the entire song, really. The intro has these beautiful vocals from James Blake, but he's really harmonizing throughout the entire song, giving out this really angelic, sonic atmosphere. And allegedly, this song is still being worked on in the current Kanye era. It still has life and still may potentially end up on a future Kanye release, which is really exciting. While fans call the song Always, the official title, like I said previously, was What I Would Have Said at Virgil's Funeral, with Virgil referring to Kanye's late friend, the legendary fashion designer Virgil Abloh. Kanye and Virgil were extremely close, not only professionally but also personally, and Ye has discussed on various occasions now throughout the years how deeply he was hurt that he wasn't allowed to speak at Virgil's funeral service. I would really be interested to hear a finished version of this track with Kanye saying his piece on the loss of one of his closest friends as well as one of his greatest collaborators. The version played at the fashion event as well as the club, Kanye's mumbling through his verses. It wasn't exactly finished yet, but if he gets around to finishing the song, I'd be really interested to hear what he has to say regarding his relationship with Virgil. Now we're going to move on to my personal favorite track out of this era, and that is Showtime. This one was played second on the Naomi Campbell live stream, and all we can really make out before Kanye stopped playing the track there was him singing on the chorus saying, "Right now, it's your time. Come on, it's showtime." I love this song so much. I think it has the most potential out of any of the tracks from this era, and I would do unspeakable things for it to officially release. And then we have the last track played on that live stream, which was, it's given the fan name title of Never Coming Back. We don't know officially what the name is. That's really the main lyric we can make out from what we heard on the live. Like Showtime, we don't have a high quality snippet of this track, but from what we've heard, again, I like it. It's only played for about 40 seconds, but from what I heard on the beat, it just sounded great, and it's got like the chipmunk vocal effect, the pitched up, effect on the sample, I believe, unless it's an original vocal. When the beat kicked in, you could hear Kanye saying, "I'm not coming back, you're not coming back," and then he also says, "Pick you up at the complex," which made me think like maybe it was a song where he was discussing life as a divorced dad, picking up his kids. I don't know for sure. Allegedly, reference tracks were recorded by other artists for Kanye regarding this song, but we don't have access to any of them. And really, it's like slim pickings from here. Those tracks were premiered on the live, but we have very few snippets and knowledge about the tracks that were gonna be on this project. The only other leak we have of a song entirely is this song called Let It In, which is apparently the first song, one of the earliest songs made when Kanye and James Blake first linked up in early 2022. According to the guy who leaked it, it was on the track list for the project, and it samples this song called A Whiter Shade of Pale by Procul Harum, probably saying that wrong, never heard the track. We know the track's produced by James Blake for sure, and he has vocals on it as well, and there's just open verses left for, I'd imagine, Kanye to come on and record for. We don't have access to a version where he is on it, so we don't know whether or not he ever got back to the song. We only have this early version, and other than those songs, all we have is a few snippets of tracks. We got a 28-second snippet of this track called Close It All Down, obviously produced by James Blake and No ID, made during these sessions. With the snippet, I like what I hear too. Kanye's talking about how he's gonna close it all down, and he's got auto-tune on his vocals. It sounds pretty great. And then we have a snippet of this track called Quiet, where insiders describe this one as having a chip tune organ on the instrumental. It's produced by James Blake, and you guessed it, No ID. Made in, you guessed it, War Era. But on the snippets we have Kanye singing, Kanye's rapping on the track, and also James Blake has vocals as well. There's 2 snippets we have, which we have no information regarding a title of or anything. One of them is a reference track done by Don Toliver. The other has just James Blake vocals. He's singing on it. What's interesting about the Don Toliver track, though, is it has trap production, with most of the songs in this era for the collab sounding very ethereal. As I said earlier, it just puts into question, what would the sound have officially been? Would it have been all those angelic tracks mixed in with some Donda 2 sounding, trap joints? We don't know. There's also allegedly a track where Kanye does like a baby voice, really similar to Playboi Carti's, I guess. And I guess there's another track they worked on at this time where they sampled Beyonce's song Church Girl. We don't have any snippets of these though. What's interesting to me is that the North song, You Don't Want, that was made in this era, at least at first, with the beat and the sample and everything. We don't know if North laid her fire ass verse down in the Vultures era or in this time in 2022. But either way, the song is a product of the War era. And other than those few songs, that's really all we know about the material that was gonna make up this collab project. And while we don't have access to many songs, we do have a pretty basic idea of what the project would have sounded like sonically, and I really would love for Kanye to put a project out like this. To me, it's just so unfortunate that Kanye's words in late 2022 completely overshadowed these awesome songs he premiered just before the controversy began. It's just another example of us Kanye fans never winning, but hey, maybe there is a chance that this thing is still in the works. It is still good to know, though, that James Blake and Kanye still are going to work together professionally in a music sense, regardless of Blake's dislike, and rightfully so, of Kanye's statements, like I said, in late 2022. I would assume that they're on good terms if Kanye premiered that track at the listening event, but at the same time, didn't clear the new body verse for Nicki, didn't clear the Everybody sample, so just wishful thinking on my end, man. But according to various trusted sources, this James Blake, Kanye, and No ID collab album still has some life to it, and if nothing else, a lot of the essential tracks are still being worked on at this point in time. The only one named officially, though, is Always. I'm just happy to hear that the project has some life, and my god, do I hope one day we get to hear a finished version of Showtime. I'm KC. If you want to keep up with my thoughts and coverage on Ye as well as various other artists, you can go ahead and follow me on Twitter at DigitalXDownload, Instagram, just Casey Culkin, and on TikTok officially now at DigitalXDownload as well. And of course, you could subscribe here on YouTube. For Digital Download, this has been all we know about the unreleased James Blake, Kanye, and No ID collab album.